Welcome once again to Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff. I'm Michelle Passoff. This is the place to come for news you can use to get things done in life without anything in the way of the road ahead. It's common to speak of too many papers, clothes, and other paraphernalia as clutter, and they are. But around here, we stretch the definition of clutter to include areas of life that are confounding and confronting. We sweep the things we don't want to address under the carpet to be dealt with another day, or better yet, never. Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff is the place to come to drag those conversations out from the darkness and bring them into the light of day so we can talk about them, learn what we need to learn, and plot a course of action that will invigorate our lives and create a legacy, not a mess. Get your financial house in order, repair, complete, or create a new social, intimate, and family relationships. What about telling your side of your life story so that you can inform and inspire your kids or grandkids? Don't know what to do next in life? Let's look at it. Does your eating and exercise regimen need a reboot? Digital devices making you dizzy? All these areas of life are clutter if they have you stuck and stopped in your tracks. So we're here to generate conversations that will help you sort things out, and where to live may be next on your agenda. Have you scratching your head if it's time to downsize, go to a warmer climate, move closer to children, reduce expenses, or just turn the page? We're going to live next may be one of the things on your mind. Today, we've invited Trish, Becker, and Diane, Wiley here to shed some light on the housing option you may not know about or have questions about, and it's called co-housing. Trish Becker is the executive director of the Co-Housing Association of the U.S. and a founding member of ARIA Co-Housing and Chase Street Commons, a micro-village built upon the principles of co-housing. She is a TEDx speaker and a passionate advocate for housing solutions that address our collective crisis of loneliness, environmental degradation, and housing inaccessibility. Above all, she believes that humans need one another for meaning and survival, and that collective housing is poised to be among the signature movements of our time. She is joined today by Diane Wiley, who is recently retired from her job as Associate Director of Foundation Relationships at Mount Holyoke College and a founding member and longtime resident of Cherry Hill Co-Housing in Western Massachusetts. She is a speaker and facilitator on many topics, including senior living in co-housing and aging successfully in community. Welcome, Diane. So Trish, first, for those of us out there who don't know what co-housing is, can you tell us and enlighten us what is co-housing?
Sure. So co-housing is an intentional and collaborative neighborhood that combines private homes with shared indoor and outdoor spaces, which is all designed to support an active and interdependent community life. So co-housing is not a financial or a legal model. It's really a descriptive term of a neighborhood that's designed to facilitate connection. So one way that we describe it is shared space, shared stuff, and shared values. So again, in co-housing, you have a private home, but there is often a shared dining room, common house, yoga studios, hot tubs, gardens, etc., as well as sort of an ethos of sharing different things to reduce space and clutter in one's life. And then shared time indicates just the intention of people who live in co-housing to spend their time together at community meetings and gatherings and in support of one another. And then shared values just indicates that intention of people who enter a co-housing community have that shared intention to show up for one another and to dedicate some of their time, labor, and love towards the community.
So when you say shared values, do you mean that everybody has the same religion or the same political background, or is the community diverse in that way?
Yeah, great question. No, co-housing communities are typically not constructed around identity or religion. There are some exceptions. There are some communities that are created for a specific identity. But when I say shared values, I mean shared values such as sustainability or connectedness rentals, that sort of thing, that would bring people into an alternative living situation, such as co-housing.
So not all co-housing communities are alike. Each one is different than the other. It's not like one big umbrella corporation running these housing communities. They're all independently run?
Yes, exactly. So we have urban, suburban, rural communities of all different sizes. There are condo communities made up of single family homes, duplexes, etc. They're all very different from one another. But there are some key elements that make co-housing. One of those is participatory design. So residents are involved from the beginning in designing the community. Another factor is non-hierarchical decision-making. So you're not going to find a leader of a co-housing community. Rather, the community members make decisions together. So those are a few of the key elements that sort of united them under co-housing.
Is this something that's new, or has this been around for a while? Was it started in the U.S. or elsewhere?
Yeah, well, we know that living together and communally has existed for pretty much as long as humans have been around, but the specific architectural model of co-housing began in Denmark in the 1960s. And Katie McCammett and Chuck Durrett were two architects who traveled there and then came back and wrote a book about it, and thus introduced the concept of co-housing to the U.S. in the 80s. So.
And if somebody wanted to go out and find out about co-housing, good idea to read that book, perhaps?
That's a great place to start. Yeah, we call it The Book on Co-housing.
The book?
Yeah, the name is Creating Co-housing, Building Sustainable Communities.
Okay, well, that's besides going to your website, what is your website? www.cohousing.org.
That's exactly right.
You could start to find out about it there. But co-housing, although you're intergenerational in many places, senior co-housing is your bailiwick, isn't it, Diane?
That's right. And that came about when Charles Durrett went back to Denmark to see how things were going 25, 30 years in, and found what they were how they were dealing with their growing senior population. They were creating senior communities, senior specific. And so he wrote another book on senior co-housing. It's called The Senior Co-housing Handbook, Community Approach to Independent Living. I looked it up just so I get it right, Charles Durrett. And all of the books, there's several books on co-housing. And again, you can find that at the cohousing.org website.
Why is senior co-housing a good option for seniors? Or is it? I guess you think it's a good option, so I'm not going to say or not. It is a good option. Is that correct?
It is an option, and that I think is very good. Let's put it that way. When you're retiring, you can age in place in your home and get isolated and maybe not have an accessible home. And you can age faster. You can decline quicker. Research has been done that when you can be in community, whether it's retirement communities or co-housing, is much better for you health-wise. But the difference between co-housing and retirement communities are that retirement communities are for-profit, managed by a company, whereas co-housing is self-managed. So you and your neighbors are making decisions about how to live together, how to decide to use your resources, as well as building the social capital and the social fabric of the community. Retirement communities, they do the programming for you, and it's their choices. It's a much more passive experience where co-housing is much more active. And I'll mention another phrase that's come up is co-living. That's a new one too by for-profit developers that are developing, especially urban areas, high-rises with living spaces and communal spaces. So you get your bedroom and maybe a bathroom or a shared bathroom. It's much more transient. You're not in control. Again, it's being managed for you. It's more costly. So co-living is not co-housing. And also,
I see.
And
that's a good distinction. And how many of these co-housing communities are there in the country, and how many of them are for seniors? Can either one of you address that?
Well, over the 40 years, 180 have been built and have been lived in either for 40 years to 4 years to just moving in. And I think, Trish, you said there was another 100 plus in some stage of development. And then among those, with senior co-housing as a newer element of the movement, there's 17 that are built and another 4 or 5 that are in development.
And if somebody passes away and you own the property in a co-housing community, is that correct? You own the property?
Yes. Yep.
And when somebody passes away and their family inherits it, do they have to sell it to somebody else who's within the age parameters of that community, or can they move in?
That's a great question. And many communities have developed resale policies, including addressing inheritance. So ideally, you sell it to someone who's 55 plus, but many communities aren't 100%. They're allowed to have 20% of their units be under 55. So, and many communities like mine, we help sellers find new buyers. We actually keep an active waiting list, as does many other communities. And I'll just mention that for folks that are interested. If they're interested in a particular community, they should find out if they've got a waiting list of future potential buyers. And that's another way to make that match.
It's difficult for many people to get along with their own family. Why is it better when you're living with many families? How do you keep the peace?
Well, certainly people ask this all the time. So is everyone best friends in a co-housing community? Of course not. It's a group of human beings, and an individual will feel closer with some, and there will be conflict. The difference is that in co-housing, there's a culture of embracing conflict. So many communities have a conflict resolution process that's in place. They have, some have a committee that's sort of a support team that you can call in. And many communities or experienced communitarians recommend engaging that process at a really early stage to say, I don't even know if I would call this a conflict yet, but it feels like it could become something. So let's bring in the supports of our community, and that way we can work through it. The other piece is that, when you engage in collective decision making, you really have to make space for that honest communication. And so co-housing did not reinvent the wheel. They use many different governance processes, but there is a structure in place to ensure that every voice is heard in a discussion or in a decision-making process.
Is there a training program that everybody goes through to like a code of conduct within a co-housing community?
Well, kind of.
Yeah. And, our community has invested in bringing trainers in and learning nonviolent communication, conscious communication, conflict resolution skills, and then we practice them. We're coming from a culture that doesn't really train us as individuals. So it's a new skill, and we actually bring it to our workplaces and we bring it back into our families, what we learned. So I would say I've learned a ton living in community, how to get along with people who are different than me. And where I might have a specific conflict, I now have tools that I can use. So
can you boil that down to the top 3 points to make on how to get along and with others?
Patience, compassion, openness. Don't jump to, your idea isn't always the best or the right one. Learn to embrace diversity of ideas and approaches, opinions.
Wonderful. That's all good advice for anybody living anywhere with anybody. Talking about anybody, can anybody start a co-housing community? How do you? Not everybody goes into one that's already existing. Some start from scratch, right? How does that work? How long does it take till move-in day?
So we always say that there are 3 ways if you're ready to jump and join co-housing, you can join an existing community, which, as you can imagine, is challenging. Once you live in co-housing, you don't necessarily want to move out, but most communities do maintain a wait list. So it helps to engage with those existing communities regardless. You also can form your own community by connecting with others in your area and starting to dream together. Or you can join a group that's in formation somehow. So all of these communities are listed on our directory at cohousing.org. And I always recommend that people start with their local community. So hop on the directory, look and see what communities are around you or in a place that you travel. Go and start to get a feel for what it's like to live in co-housing, talk to one another, and know that existing communities often serve as sort of a catalyst. So they'll connect you with other dreamers, which can then build into another community.
Where do you see the future of co-housing going? I mean, this sounds like nirvana to live in a co-housing community where people talk and get along and relate. And do you see that this is going to become more and more popular for people to choose this kind of housing?
Yeah, I think because it's a grassroots model, it's harder to scale it. And I think that one of the things that those of us in the co-housing movement who really want to grow it want to work with developers, with municipalities to get them to learn about this because we find them one at a time with each project, right? We find a developer, we find a builder, we find a bank, but to really try to bring the message to those and engage them to help us grow it. So yes, it can continue to do it one at a time, but I think to really scale it in going in the future, because people love this idea. We do it. Yeah. We do a monthly question and answer, and we get 30 to 40 people on our calls every month. So
people can tune in from anywhere in the country to listen and get questions answered about co-housing?
Yes.
And how do they go about doing that, Diane?
Well, Trish does a general co-housing 101 on the 10th of every month. And you can sign up for it on the cohousing.org website. And then my seniors committee does one on the 20th of every month. Same thing. You can register on cohousing.org. And it's informal conversation. You can come with your questions.
Well, that's great. That's going to be where we're going to leave it for today is that you have to take the initiative, go to the www.cohousing.org website, read those books that Trish and Diane told us about, and see whether or not co-housing is for you and whether or not you want to live in integrated community where it's many age levels, or if you want to join a senior community. You can, there's plenty of YouTube videos about co-housing out there, and there's several books on Amazon written by other people on co-housing. So action is the only thing that's going to make a difference when it comes to cleaning clutter and getting any confusion you have about where you're going to live next and whether co-housing is for you. So if you want to find out more about it, just do it, as they say. So thank you, Trish and Diane, for being here today. So if you have comments, questions, suggestions, or stories about your solutions to common areas of clutter in your life, please go to our website, www.decluttering55plus.com, click on the Let's Connect button, and send a message to us. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and by all means, subscribe to Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff on YouTube. Click the like button on the podcast platform you're listening from today so we can grow this community. Again, I want to thank you for listening in this week, and I invite you to tune in again when we download the next episode and find out more about what's possible for you on the road ahead. Again, I'm Michelle Passoff, and have a clutter-free day.